Nobody tonight said a damn thing. They want you to vote for a ticket based on absolutely no concrete idea about what they would do.
We have said it before, and we will say it again. At CNN right now, there actually is a reason to tune in if you see that Scott Jennings is on the panel. Scott Jennings, seriously, this channel might end up being some kind of Scott Jennings Stan account, because he every single time he appears on a panel discussion, he is a happy warrior with a conservative message, and he cuts right to his colleagues on these discussions and tells them the truth that is denied to the CNN viewers from every other incredibly well-paid analyst and anchor sitting at the very same desk. And last night was no exception. After 3 nights of Democrat National Convention propaganda, where we've, by the way, heard nothing about foreign policy so far from anyone up on that stage, and hardly anything really about domestic policy, Scott Jennings finally had enough, and he told the truth.
Nobody tonight said a damn thing. They want you to vote for a ticket based on absolutely no concrete idea about what they would do once they get in office. You said he got more progressive when he got elected governor. So you're saying every time he gets another office, he gets more and more progressive. I think that's exactly what would happen. Tonight, you did hear people say, well, we may not agree with them on everything, but at least it'll be joyful as they tax us into oblivion. I think the idea that you could run an entire presidential campaign based on the idea of vote for me to find out what's in it.
Wait a minute, Scott.
Terrify every American.
Scott, your candidate has done that his entire political career. I mean, Donald Trump does not talk about any policy issue.
I want to pause here for a minute because he's got a great reply to this. But you notice the count here. And I just want to be clear. Anderson Cooper is the host of the show. He's the anchor of the show. He's supposed to be the serious journalist. This is CNN, after all. And then he's got David Axelrod, right, who was the campaign manager for Barack Obama. He's got Van Jones, who was part of the Obama campaign. He was the climate czar, if I remember right, before he was shamed into resigning his position because it turned out he was a 9/11 truther. Oh, yeah, that's true. Look it up. And I forget this woman's name. I'm sorry, but she's also a liberal commentator. So it's 3-1 already, just in terms of the analysts. And then the first person to rebut Scott Jennings is not one of the 3 liberals that they've hired to be analysts and give their opinion. It's the anchor who just can't help himself but to jump in and start arguing with his guest. I mean, listen, I'm a host of a show, and I've got my opinions. In fact, I'm literally an opinion journalist. I'm paid to give my opinion while I host my show. Anderson isn't. CNN still tries to pretend that they're unbiased, and here he is debating with his guest, which is remarkable. I mean, Anderson, dude, you've got 3 people there to do it for you, but that's fine. Let's watch it unfold here.
Sure he does.
Yeah, he's going to lower inflation. He's going to eliminate inflation. Excuse me. That's on day one. He's going to take away Obamacare on day one. I mean,
he's going to be tougher on immigration.
Your argument, I understand your argument, but it doesn't. Given the candidate who you are backing, it rings a little hollow because there is no flesh on the bone of anything he's talking about.
I'm the only person who doesn't sign up to work for candidates. Okay, like I work for CNN. I'm here to analyze the news. That's number one. Number two, I think what they are telegraphing to the American people is, we know if we told you what we were going to do, it would be monumentally unpopular.
That's exactly right. And Anderson Cooper is incredibly disingenuous here about this false attack on Donald Trump. Because if you go to the Trump website right now, you'll see a list of 40 bullet points and items of their policy positions of what they will do when they get there. And to say that there's no meat on the bones, you don't need meat on the bones when you're running for your second term. I was president 4 years ago. I know how to do it because I did it then. Remember how things were? I'll go back to where we were, honestly. Meanwhile, if you go to Kamala Harris's website right now, there's still no policy positions. Why? Because as soon as she actually hammers one home, as Scott Jennings just said, it's incredibly unpopular. The one thing she's come out with is the price controls and Marxism that she announced last week. Have you noticed something about the polls right now? They haven't budged in like 2 weeks. She's in the middle of her convention right now, and she's getting nothing out of this. If anything, the more you hear about Kamala Harris and what she would do as president, God forbid, and the more you see of Kamala Harris and her mannerisms and her way of speaking and her, God forbid, laughter, the less you like her. That's why they're protecting her. That's why they're not saying anything about what they would do. That said, when Tim Walz took the stage yesterday, rather than talk about what he intends to do as president, Scott Jennings is correct. What instead he did was attack Donald Trump, attack J.D. Vance, attack conservatism, lie about conservatism, and try to set himself apart as some sort of good old folksy dude who's just like your Uncle Joe. You know, the Uncle Joe who started the Gay Straight Alliance at high school to make sure that teenage boys had a safe space to be gay. Yeah, that Uncle Joe. Well, in his attempt to attack J.D. Vance, he said a very peculiar thing.
I had 24 kids in my high school class, and none of them went to Yale.
It's this new attack on J.D. Vance because he went to Yale. Now, of course, even in this attack, they're lying or at least misrepresenting the facts. J.D. Vance, after high school, joined the Marine Corps and served in Iraq while there was combat in Iraq. Tim, Master Sergeant Walz. And then when he came home, he utilized the GI Bill and got his undergrad degree at The Ohio State University. Then after he graduated from The Ohio State University, he then went on to graduate school at Yale. But he makes it sound like, he got out of school and went straight to Yale because he's an elitist snob. By the way, not for nothing. After he went to Yale and then started a business, he then returned home. Unlike people who come from, rural parts of the country, go to an elite institution and then stay on the coasts with their elite institutions, with their elite degrees, and never to return back to their home and actually bring that knowledge and bring that wealth of experience back to your home rural town and try to help the people you left behind. He actually did that, J.D. Vance did, and eloquently told their story to a nation and made a difference in how we see people from Appalachia. And once again, Scott Jennings at CNN raised this bizarre new talking point that the Democrats seem to be celebrating, that they're going to go after somebody who grew up in a poor rural town and then got an Ivy League degree.
Something he does that is so weird to me, the constant attacks on J.D. Vance for going to Yale. I don't understand this. I've heard Walz proclaim to be a small town guy who wants everybody to get an education and succeed. And he spends a fair amount of time attacking J.D. Vance, who grew up poor and got an education, worked hard to get an education and rise above his station in life. And he has used it as a punchline on the campaign trail. And I don't understand what he's trying to communicate to every small town poor kid out there, saying, if you choose to work hard and go to an Ivy League school, you somehow abandon your hometown. I don't get it.
Speaking as one of those small town kids who actually went to Yale,
yes,
I do take exception to that. I think you are correct on that.
Yeah.
See, that's great. And I will hand it to Van Jones. I've never met Van Jones, and I'm not a huge fan of his politics, but I know people, conservatives, who have had exchanges and conversations with Van Jones. And I have to say that's indicative of what I hear about him. That's a good point, what you made there. But again, and I want to point out, I don't know where Van Jones grew up, but I doubt he got his Ivy League education and then took that and the business he started and the wealth that he acquired back to his hometown to try to actually improve the lives of the people who live there. That is what J.D. Vance did. And Jennings is absolutely correct. The message from Democrats now, if you are a poor kid growing up in a rural town, that if you leave to go get an elite university education, you're in some way a sellout, or you've abandoned your real roots, and you should be condemned for this. This is bizarre, isn't it? Especially coming from the Democrats. Our friend Phil Wegman, Capitol Hill reporter, or White House reporter, excuse me, over at Real Clear Politics. He pointed this out last night. He's in Chicago covering the race, and he put together this list that at the same time Tim Walz is on stage using J.D. Vance's ability to get an advanced degree at Yale as some kind of cudgel to beat him over the head with. On that very same stage over the last 2 nights, Cory Booker, Yale, Bill Clinton, Yale, Jaime Harrison, Yale, Amy Klobuchar, Yale, Pete Buttigieg, Harvard, Amanda Gorman, Harvard, Mindy Kaling, Dartmouth, Cecile Richardson, Brown, John Legend, Penn, Alex McGill Johnson, Princeton and Yale, Jared Polis, Princeton, Oprah Winfrey, honorary degrees from Princeton and Harvard, Stevie Wonder, honorary degree from Yale, not to mention Barack Obama, Harvard, and Michelle Obama, Princeton. What in the hell are we doing here? These people are awful, and they're liars, and they're hypocrites, and they deserve to be defeated, and they deserve to have Scott Jennings call them out the way he's been doing so well. And there's more. Is this also Scott from last night? I want to check the tie here. Yeah, this is also Scott Jennings, because we have one from the night before too. He's just been so on fire. So take it away, Scott.
I think the Democrats want people to vote for her based on a vibe or an attitude and not really think all that hard about what it would mean to implement the kind of policy agenda that she has mostly stood for in her career. And Anderson, there may not be a debate about who can be more joyful, but there has to be a debate about who can get the country back on the right track when 3/4 think it's off on the wrong one.
Yeah, and by the way, this whole joyful thing, it's all pretense. It's all created. In fact, there's a clip going around now. Maybe I can pull it for you. Here's a clip of Kamala Harris on the Ellen show. Remember Ellen? Talk about fake and phony and fraudulent joy. I mean, Ellen would always, she's just so fun and she's so happy and she's everybody's friend. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Ellen was like a terror. She was terrorizing her entire staff. But back in 2019 or 2018, I think, when Kamala Harris was contemplating a run for the White House, she came on Ellen DeGeneres, and here was the message she had back then.
We have to be joyful warriors. You know, I decided at the end of last year, there was so much that was just creating anxiety and depression and anger. And I was like, I'm done with that. I'm done with that. I don't like that feeling. I don't think any of us do. And let's just go into 2018 and be joyful warriors.
I like that term, right? Joyful warriors. Yeah.
It was a construct then. The whole thing, it's been scripted. This whole thing has been scripted. And now they're continuing to use it over and over again. And of course, the media takes their memos and their talking points. They say, that's true. They're bringing the joy. It's all about joy, joyful, joyful. They're actually trying to tell you to be joyful while you have to pay $8 a pound for hamburger. Because as long as you feel joyful about Kamala Harris in her pantsuit dancing around on stage and, well, Tim Walz in his pantsuit dancing around on stage, then I guess everything's going to be just fine. But none of it is. And it's all fraudulent to keep you from actually seeing what they stand for and what they intend to do should they, God forbid, win this election. The last thing they want to do is talk about what they're going to do. Scott Jennings, by the way, had one more great drop the mic moment. This one comes from last night. But again, in this same setting with this same panel makeup, he points out the obvious fact that the left, the liberals, Anderson Cooper, refuses to acknowledge.
In all these speeches, as good as they were, is that she's in the White House right now. Democrats have controlled the White House for 12 of the last 16 years. And for all of the talk about division and the problems in the country and people are hurting, Democrats have mostly controlled this country. Trump had it for 4. The Obamas and Biden had it for the rest of the time. And somehow it's still all Trump's fault. And somehow she hasn't been at the center of it. So to me, that's still the glaring hole in this campaign that hasn't yet been solved at the convention. How do you explain all of the problems that will be solved by the person who is currently in there for the last 3.5 years, who is supposed to already be working on solving it? But
that's right. They are the incumbents. They are running on 4 more years. This is, in fact, we keep calling it the Biden-Harris administration because that's what they called it at the beginning. But in reality, This is the Harris-Biden administration, because we know that Joe Biden is incapacitated. We don't, everyone says, oh, who's really running the White House? Who's really making the decisions? Well, the fact that Kamala Harris has now effortlessly, without a single vote, stepped into the role of being the incumbent and taking his nomination from him, we are only wise to assume that she is in fact running this White House. This is not the Biden-Harris administration. This is the Harris-Biden administration. But just watch tonight when she gives her speech. She's going to act like she's going to promise all of these great new things if you only elect her and put her in the White House, when she literally has an office in the White House. And it took Scott Jennings on CNN to actually deliver those facts to the viewers, because otherwise they would have no idea. Scott Jennings, we tip our hat. We salute you. Keep up the good work. And by the way, right now is the time to hold out for an increase in your contract. I'm telling you, brother, if you got an agent, if you don't, sign me up. I'll only take 5%, not 10%, because you got them, baby. Right now, you let CNN know that you demand a brand new contract, because you right now are indispensable for that network. And between you and me, they know it.